All right, welcome. How's everybody doing? Excellent. Thank you for being wonderful. Wonderful. Great to hear that. Awesome energy. Very good. Very good. Thank you, everybody, for being here and welcome. My name is Arun Bhatia, Senior Program Director here at MATTER. I want to welcome all of you that are joining us here and the many, many folks that we have on live stream as well. Thank you guys for joining us tonight for this really exciting program and launch of a very exciting new program for us. So just a quick show of hands. How many folks have been here to MATTER before? This is great. Every time I ask this question, more and more people raise their hands, which is awesome. So I think I'll spare you the dog and pony show, but you know, one of the things that you all know is that we work with about over 200 companies here in the startup community. 2/3 of those are in the digital health IT space. What I hope differentiates us a little bit is our partnerships that we have with our industry partners. Mostly our health systems, our payers, and our pharma and med tech companies who have been phenomenal partners of ours. And for those of you that have been here before, you know sort of the thesis of MATTER, that great innovations aren't born in a lab, aren't born in a bubble, but they're born in collaborations with our industry partners together with our entrepreneurs. And tonight's program is kind of the launch that really epitomizes some of that collaboration that we're striving so hard to work for. One of our partners, Novo Nordisk, who we started engaging with earlier this year, started talking to us. We were talking to them about being part of MATTER, engaging with our community. They were very interested in learning about the solutions and technologies that are coming out of our space. What was really intriguing to us was that they came to us saying, we're certainly interested in learning more about your startups, and we want to, we're playing in the digital health space as many of our partners are, but we are really committed to co-developing a solution with the community. We want to work hand in hand with the community in doing that. And we were really excited about that because we have a lot of folks who come in and say, yes, I want to meet your startups, I want to learn a little bit more, but the commitment sometimes, is not there. And it was great to see their energy around, how do we really make this work? How do we work together to really implement something that's important for our patients and the diabetes patients? As many of you know, a lot of our partners are working in the digital health space. I don't have to tell you guys about the value of digital health in healthcare. There's a lot of folks that are moving in that direction. What we wanted to do tonight was share a little bit about, folks from Novo are going to share a little bit about what they're doing in the space, what digital health kind of means to them, how are they addressing it. And we're going to spend a good amount of time talking about the challenge that we've launched with them. Some of the details of that, what they might be looking for, some of the logistics around that, and how you guys can participate in that. And so we're really looking forward to having your engagement and having your energy as part of this program. I think you'll find it's really, really very exciting in terms of how you might have an opportunity to engage with Novo Nordisk. So with that, let me just do a very quick intro, and I'll actually ask Hollie and Katarina to introduce themselves as well. But Hollie Baigent, Project Lead Open Innovation, Device Research and Development from Novo, is joining us all the way from Denmark. So thank you for being here. And Katarina LeFever from the Digital Health Innovation and Patient-centric Marketing Group at Novo will be here as well. The way we're going to structure this evening, really briefly, is Katarina's going to share a little bit about Novo for those of you that might not know much about it. We'll share a little bit of high-level information of what they're doing. Hollie's going to walk through the challenge, some of the specs of the challenge and what they're doing, what they're looking for. And then we're going to wrap up with a little bit of a fireside chat, taking your questions, both around the challenge and around Novo Nordisk itself. We're going to be doing Q&A through matter.socialqa.com. So that's matter.socialqa.com. So the folks that are on live stream who are watching this remotely, feel free to log in, send your questions in, and we'll have a chance to address those. We are also going to take some questions from the audience. We've got kind of a cozy group here tonight, so if folks have a question in the audience, feel free to raise your hands. I'd ask please wait till you get a microphone so folks on live stream can hear the question as well. And then we will go from there and wrap up after that with networking and what's left of food and drink. Sound good? All right, excellent. So with that, Katarina, I'm going to turn it over to you for an introduction. Thank you.
Does this work? Can you hear me? Yes, okay. I just need the clicker, Arun, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, well, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for coming. As Arun mentioned, I am Katarina LeFever. I am with Novo Nordisk. I've been there for about 3 years, and I come from a pharmaceutical advertising background, but I'm very, very excited by digital health. And no worries, I will not walk you through our lessons learned over the last 95 years at Novo Nordisk. But I'm just curious, how many of you have heard of Novo Nordisk? Just a few. Okay, because we're usually confused with Novartis, so that's good to know. But anyway. So we're Novo Nordisk. We're a company based in Denmark. And although we're in about 79 countries, we market our products in 150. And we really started out innovating, and that's what we pride ourselves on as well. We started innovating in the diabetes space. So we produce over half of the world's insulin. So as we're priding ourselves on our insulin, on our medications for diabetes, we have also entered the obesity space and hemophilia. So this is definitely a very important area for us as well. So yes, we're very much focusing on diabetes, but we're also opening this up beyond diabetes. Okay, so here's kind of an astounding statistic. About 415, and most of you may know this already, people have diabetes. And what's so scary is that by 2045, this number will almost double if we don't do anything about it. And 1 in 2 people live with diabetes. And you know, some of them may not get diagnosed, and I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but some of them may not be diagnosed until actually they experience some symptoms and go to the emergency room. Like I had a personal experience with my husband. Luckily, through some lifestyle changes, he was able to conquer that. But 7 in 10 people do not achieve the desired treatment goals. And it's not because they don't want to. We actually have a group of people at Novo Nordisk. There are about 100 of them in-house who have type 1 and type 2 diabetes, and we leverage them for learnings and insights. And even these people who are highly educated, and they know so much about diabetes and treatments, they struggle. So it's a very complex disease, and 4 million deaths are occurring on a yearly basis. I was interviewing a nurse not that long ago. It was part of a really of a project, and she shared with me that just within the last 6 months, she witnessed 2 deaths in the emergency room. She was a nurse, young girls, two women who passed away because of diabetes. So we need to do something about it. So that's why we're here, and we're very excited about this opportunity of what we can achieve. I don't know if you've heard about the rule of halves. But just imagine 400 out of the 415 people will be diagnosed. Only about 50% will be diagnosed. And then out of those 50% or 25% out of the ones that will be diagnosed will receive care. And we know that particularly in this country, people don't have access to health care. So that's another big problem. However, even those who do have access to care, there's so many reasons why they're not following their regimen or just don't know the disease because, as I said, it is so complicated. It's very difficult to treat. And then only half of them achieve their treatment targets. And only 6% achieve the desired outcome. So when you think about it, only 6% out of the 415 million people will actually maintain somewhat healthy lifestyle. It's very scary, but again, that's why we're here, and that's why we're hoping that we all will be able, with your help, to close the gap through digital health. And how? So this is the patient treatment ecosystem. So I'm going to just advance ahead and show you how it's evolved over the last few years. So the traditional healthcare ecosystem is we have a patient, we have a doctor, we have the healthcare system and payer. And now, because patients have, are generating so much data through wearable devices, apps, just imagine the endless opportunities that we'll have. We have actually launched, I'm very proud of this because I was leading this project. About a year and a half, we have what we call the Cornerstones for Care Powered by Gluco app, which is an app. We partnered with Gluco. This was our very first partnership. And Gluco, as you may know or not, it's basically an app that helps patients track their blood glucose levels. We partnered with this company because this was a very new space for us, and we knew we would be able to generate data, but we weren't really sure what we would do with this data. A year and a half later, we're now starting to learn and see patterns that we can actually do something with. So we're very, very early stages right now, but we've learned quite a bit over the last year and a half. So we're not afraid to learn, experiment, even if it means that we'll fail at some points. We absolutely understand it, but my point here is we're able to connect the healthcare provider, the patient, the healthcare system, the payers through data. And even the one thing that I was really excited about in the beginning of this year is that we now have a code for remote monitoring. So I think that's just wonderful. And if we can, I mean, we were really celebrating this internally at Novo Nordisk because that will entice the physician to truly look at the data and help the patient. So with that, I will hand it over to Hollie. But again, we'll be taking questions later on if you have any. There we go.
So much. Thank you so much for coming. It's really great to see you all. So just briefly before we show our video, I just want to say, so my name is Hollie Baigent, and I've flown in from Copenhagen, Denmark, to be here this evening. So bear with me, I might be a little bit jet lagged. It's 2 a.m. there, and my throat. But I've been at Novo Nordisk for about 4 years. I'm originally from Australia. And basically my role at Novo Nordisk has been to co-development with people living with diabetes and other chronic conditions, as well with healthcare professionals to basically look at the next generation of basically devices that we're developing. So I come from research and development in devices. So I work with a lot of different engineers to actually come up with the new tools of the future, and very much driving innovation. So my role here in Novo Nordisk is actually to lead open innovation. So how can we co-develop and work with entrepreneurs and startups to also build the next generation of tools for people living with serious chronic conditions. So that's just a little bit about me and my background. And I think you press play. So I'll just sit down for this and then I'll pop up. Challenge website. And I want to talk a little bit more about our innovation challenge that we've partnered up with Matter Health to help us achieve. And it's basically all about digital health startups, hackers, data scientists working on innovative solutions. We're looking for these types of individuals as well as students, PhD students that are also coming up with really innovative ideas to basically help us and help you develop the next generation of disruptive digital health solutions for people living with diabetes especially. At Novo Nordisk for the past 95 years, I mean, we're fantastic at developing insulins. And now we need to actually go that extra step and actually disrupt the whole ecosystem around connectivity, connected pens, how you collect data, how do you actually make people feel comfortable with actually sharing their health data. How many of you have a Fitbit out of interest? A few of you. So again, these technologies are becoming much more available and people are much more interested in actually tracking a lot of their health data. And health data is actually quite important when you think about managing diabetes. It's such a complex disease. There's so many factors that influence how you can actually have a very healthy life living with diabetes, such as food, stress, all sorts of aspects, particularly your blood glucose levels. So there's many facets of managing such a complex disease, and we know that a lot of this is around self-management. It's very much to the individual that has to log all their injections, or their food, their exercise. On average, it's about 1 year that a person has to actually self-manage their diabetes. So we are very much focusing on the self-management atmosphere. How can we actually empower people living with diabetes to actually better self-manage themselves? Because we also know on average doctors are able to spend maybe about 16 minutes with a person living with diabetes, so that's not a lot of time. So we need to be more supportive on how we actually help these people living with this burden of this disease. So we basically set a challenge around these 4 key focus areas. And I'm an industrial designer by background, so we use a lot of design thinking at Novo Nordisk in research and development about these how might we statements, and the we being all of us. This is something that we need to do together because the figures are pretty staggering. 450 million people living with type 2 diabetes now and 750 in the future. I mean, this is really an epidemic and we're all here to work together. So the first challenge is very much around data sharing. So how can we support patients and empower patients to feel a little bit more comfortable sharing their data with the physicians? Because it's also exposing a lot of the habits that maybe you have been doing, and it's very confronting to actually share that with the physicians. So how can we look at ways and solutions that we can facilitate that sharing and incentivize that sharing of that data? Because it's very personal and it's very new. And then also around titration. So how can we look at new solutions to better improve treatment plans and how people start on different types of medicines as well? Then we look at the dialogue. So we've actually launched a durable connected pen, which basically tracks your dose size, what drug type you have, when was your last injection. This is all being connected out of the pen to a smartphone app. And we've done a pilot in Sweden to actually experiment, okay, what is actually the value that is coming out of these connected pens? And it's providing a lot of value in the patient and healthcare provider dialogue. So the physician is now actually, hey, I actually saw that you were missing an injection and you had a hypo. So you can actually see the sort of closed loop system of what it's actually like to manage diabetes. So we also see there's a lot of opportunities on how we can enhance that dialogue between physicians and from patients, especially when you can't see each other always within that 16 minutes and maybe 2 or 3 times a year. It's not a lot of time to build that relationship. So how can we ease that? And then also around health insights, of course. We're collecting lots and lots of data. So how can we actually help payers better look at clinical outcomes around lots of populations of data sets? So maybe there's some really innovative solutions on how we can focus on these 4 focus areas. So what we're asking for innovators is to basically come up with one or maybe a combination of more than the one as well. So these are our key focus areas. So what are the benefits? Why should I apply? Well, really, we see the opportunity to actually elevate your brand and your presence. Novo Nordisk, as you can see, actually supplies half the world's insulin. So we have a huge population that we cater for, and we have a responsibility to deliver. And we're also looking at opportunities where we can potentially license or sell your solution. So we're looking to secure partnerships as part of our digital health solution. And we're very much looking forward to working with you and potentially licensing your solution if we see that it's a good strategic fit for us. What's even more exciting is that we have a lot of in-house experts at Novo Nordisk that have been working with digital health and connected pens for some time. And we really want to bring those people to you to actually help and bring and add value to your teams and your ideas. Sort of in Danish, we call it like a sparring partner, somebody that you can talk to and get some advice. We really want to put ourselves out there and actually meet you all. And this is also why we're here tonight. Another aspect is, of course, MATTER is a fantastic community. As Arun said, over 200 startups and fantastic curriculum. And this is also why we strategically chose MATTER, because you actually develop a dedicated platform specifically for healthcare innovators. And I think that's quite unique compared to a lot of the other incubators we're seeing out there. So that's also why we felt that the startups would be in very good hands with MATTER as well. And of course, there's a cash prize, 25,000. So if you're one of the finalists, up to 5 finalists, you will receive $25,000 to further your solutions. And we will also cover travel and expenses to participate in the program as well. So we've sort of split it into sort of 3 phases. The first phase, put your hand up if you've been to our website. Great. A few of you. I highly encourage you to check out the Novo Nordisk Challenge website. So how, and this will just give you some context, so now that I know how many of you have been, please go check it out. But on our website, we've basically, at Novo Nordisk, we're an extremely patient-centered company. So we always start with the patient. What is it actually like to live with diabetes? So we've started with 2 people living with type 1 and type 2 diabetes, which is a quite different complex diseases in themselves. And we've collected data from our connected pens and also combined it with other data sets such as blood glucose monitoring, because we know that's a key aspect of managing diabetes. You need to integrate it with other important elements. So we've actually given that data set publicly available for you to have a look at, to hack. And we've got 2 data sets. We've got one in control and one out of control. So the idea is, how can you get that person back into control? Looking at all the data outputs. Maybe they're not logging their insulin. Maybe they're not logging their blood glucose. So how can you develop solutions to help that person get in better control and live a healthier and happier lifestyle, potentially? So that's the aspect. It's a call for entries. It's open. Please apply as soon as possible. We'll be closing the call for entries on October 26th. And then a dedicated team within Novo Nordisk and MATTER will actually select the 10 to 15 teams that will then go into boot camp, which will take place right here in Chicago for 3 days, where you work hand in hand with Novo Nordisk subject matter experts, dedicated curriculums and roundtables discussions to actually deep dive and validate some of the value propositions that you've come up with. And then we'll actually move to a demo day in Boston, where we'll have sort of a pitch day in front of key Novo Nordisk executives and thought leaders in digital health, who will then choose up to 5 finalists to then go into our accelerator program, which is semi-virtual, which will consist of a couple of different face-to-face meetings here in Chicago, and also a dedicated curriculum with Novo Nordisk mentors. And then we, of course, have this alumni program where we can basically keep up to date. And of course, should we decide to sign something, that would be fantastic at the conclusion of the accelerator program, then we can continue into the following year. So we've learned a lot about these different challenges, and this is something that we felt was a dedicated program, so we could spend as much time, face-to-face time, with the startups, with you all, to actually co-develop and create this, with the opportunity to actually sign something at the end of the accelerator program. All right. that's all for me now. Thanks, everyone. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Do you want the clicker?
Wonderful. Thank you. That was great background. And so just as a reminder, to go to matter.socialqa.com, enter your questions there. We'll take questions here from the audience as well. But for folks on live stream to be able to do that. Let me just toss out a few questions and then we'll take them from the audience. So both of you talked about the patient centricity of Novo and the patient focus. Curious if you can talk a little bit, elaborate a little bit more in terms of the study that you guys have been doing of diabetes patients and what you've been learning about where their biggest pain points are, what their biggest needs are. When we talk about digital health, it plays a role from things as simple as e-commerce and marketing tools all the way through digital therapeutics.
Yep.
So where do you see the role of digital playing? What
Mm-hmm.
big pain points do you see with diabetes patients today that you're looking to solve?
I can start, Hollie, if you don't mind. One of the things that we hear from our patients is, yes, they need education, but there's so much stuff out there. So how do you deliver this information to them that's relevant to them? And I think talking to digital health, particularly as an example, the app that we launched about 1.5 years ago, what makes the app unique is we combined our educational content from our patient support program, Cornerstones for Care, with the Gluco app, the core app. And one of the things that we've been hearing from our users is they definitely, they like to know how, as they're logging in their food intake, what they're eating, and and the BG levels, they would like to know how does this all impact me, and what does this mean for me? So I think that's realizing, taking all of the components and combining it and showing the patient, the user, on how that impacts them and how that information can help the physician in whether or not it's with titration, whether or not it's with this appropriate medicine. I think having that information accessible to the care team is really key, and therefore having also that support, because that is kind of the gap. The patients are not feeling supported. They think it's complicated. They have access to way too much information, but they need for someone or something to boil it down to them and interpret it for them. And they need that support network, which I think through digital health is very achievable.
Yeah. Building on that, we have a team of anthropologists and user researchers that are continuing going out and talking to patients and healthcare professionals. And as Katarina said, it's very much like, okay, how is all this technology telling me more about myself and what decisions I need to do based on the different aspects of managing my diabetes? Should I take more insulin? Should I eat something? Should I go for a walk? So it's very much about using all this data to tell me something more about myself and making it much more personalized and fit for me. I think that's very much around it. And it's also the integration of care and behavior. So when we talk about some of the unmet needs, it's very much about, again, the self-management.
Yeah.
And a lot of the complexities of, did I take my insulin? When did I take my injection? So that's some of the unmet needs, as well as also preparing for those clinical visits and deep diving into those conversations, then sort of having a very long time. How are you? How are you? Okay, that's 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Okay, and then you're out the door. So it's also kind of facilitating a better conversation, going, hey, this is what my life has been like for the past 6 months. I've, divorced, or I'm depressed, or I've had a great, Thanksgiving, which is coming up. So it's sort of putting it all out there that the physician can also be better prepared to see that. And we don't see a future without the physician. I mean, the physician is really key to managing diabetes and also having that face-to-face relationship.
So to be fair, we see a lot of technologies, a lot of folks are working on solutions for new algorithms. How do I take the data that exists today and learn something from it and provide insight? Do you see the challenge being more on the data side, that we don't have the right data pieces that we're putting together? Is the challenge more on the analysis of that data and giving me insight? Or is it downstream in terms of how do I boil it down to a physician to engage with that dialogue? Is the challenge, do you think, equal across all three of those areas, or are there one or two areas where you see the biggest challenges?
I think there's definitely, the biggest space is also pulling the data and analyzing the data, because there's so much data out there. So it's, of course, how do you make that data meaningful to somebody living with this complex disease? So I think the focus is very data specific, and very much around pulling and analyzing that data to create some sort of meaning from that.
And one of the ththings that I want to add to that I made a comment about it earlier, this is relatively new to us. Digital health at Novo Nordisk is, at least in the US, has been in existence for about 2 years now. But I'm sure we will be surprised, and we will learn together along the way, and we're very much open to that. I don't think we have a solid prescription on what we want to do, and that's why we're reaching out to you. But I think it's that collaboration and the mutual learning that is going to be very important. Yeah.
As you think about, so you've talked about the co-development and the collaboration approach that you're taking. Can you share a little bit about Novo Nordisk's experience in working with startups in the past?
Yeah.
To what extent have you worked with them? Why take this approach of the co-development piece? Share a little bit about what you've also learned from them in terms of the challenges that they have in developing solutions in this space.
If you don't mind, I'll take it.
Yeah, go for it.
But yeah, so basically, as Hollie indicated, we have wonderful insulins, but we know that alone is not enough. And our first partnership that we entered was with Gluco. That was a learning, I have to say. It was a little shocking in the beginning, but we've learned. Obviously, we have very different processes. Gluco has very different processes. They work in a very different timeline. So that was a huge learning. And one of the things that I've learned is that collaboration is the key. Is communicating, getting to know each other, and really understanding where the limits are within our environment, and also not being afraid to challenge. We are currently challenging our regulatory folks as well, and we know we have to be agile, and pharma and agile doesn't really go hand in hand together, but we know that's the future. So we've been challenging our internal stakeholders, and we're not afraid to challenge them in a very professional manner, of course. So our collaboration with Gluco has been definitely a huge learning. So we all learned a lot internally. We have changed some of our processes. We're in the process of changing our processes. So it's been. I'd be more than happy to talk to you individually as well. But it's been a shock in the beginning for me. But we know now that when we start working with another company, we have the learnings, so we are ready to talk and collaborate from the very beginning on.
Yeah. And I think, digital health is ripe for disruption, and we see that coming from startups. There's so many innovators out there with fantastic ideas, and sometimes you just need a good partner to really advance your solutions. And I've also started out as a startup as well, and I see the value that a big corporate can actually bring to further your startup idea. And engaging with startups, we've also run different competitions before. Mm-hmm. And I think a key lesson, and a lot of the feedback from the startups are like, yeah, great, I participated, but then what? Yeah. So this is really why we moved away from sort of a one-off event to a program of events. So there's lots of opportunities to actually engage and co-create with one another. And I think also the aspect of the mentors was a way to kind of help us get a closer relationship with the innovators and kind of a hands-off approach, because that's not how we learn together. That's not how we develop trust together. So I mean, it's startups. So yeah.
And I think the beauty about also offering mentors is, you know, I'll be honest, we're also very selfish. We want them exposed to you and the way of how you think. Because it's not just the digital health team that needs to think this way. It's much broader than that. It's you know, it's the payer team. It's the regulatory team. They all need to understand this new world that we live in. Yeah.
And to that point, talk a little bit about the team, the digital health team, the innovation team. Talk about some of the connections within Novo Nordisk that you're bringing to this challenge that speaks to how important this is to the company.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't mind. So our team has been in place about 2 years now here in the US. And I do have to say that we have a huge engagement and interest within the company. We actually have put together a team of stakeholders from different departments, and we meet on a monthly basis to provide them with information on what it is that you're working on. It also gives us an opportunity to engage them and collaborate and leverage each other. So the company, I have to say, the internal stakeholders are super excited, and they're very much looking forward to more, coming more out of our team. But it is a very, very exciting time for them. And we definitely have our senior leadership's commitment. We have a digital health roadmap that is pretty robust. We're in the process of evaluating some partnerships, but as you know, it does take a little bit of time in the pharmaceutical industry, but we're hoping to get better about this. But we're definitely committed, and our leadership is very much committed as well.
And building on that, I mean, I'm from Copenhagen, you're from the US. So what's also interesting about this collaboration is that Novo Nordisk is a really big company, and we have sort of affiliate offices all around the world, and then headquartered in Copenhagen. So this is really a collaboration between research and development, which is sort of developing the pipeline of new therapeutics, and also with our commercial organization, which are very close to the patients, the payers, and the healthcare professionals. So we're really trying to close the loop between R&D and actually commercializing that, and that's something that we haven't done before. So it's really a collaboration. We've also got offices in Seattle, in Copenhagen, and Princeton. So this is also within our big company something new that we're doing as well. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, definitely.
Terrific. Let's start to take some questions. Again, matter.socialqa.com. Let's start actually in the room. Are there any questions from folks in the room? Got one. If we can get a mic. Just make sure so folks online can hear you.
You addressed where this is the United States. You're from Copenhagen, different HIPAA rules and different things, how to work and that kind of stuff. How do you overcome the obstacle? Because a lot of obstacles that I've run into in dealing with any type of health startups are the HIPAA rules in the United States versus in Copenhagen, they're very lax. Do you have teams that work on the difference between that and how it works? Do you have a legal team that advises you as you go through the process, or how does that work? Or do you have like a chat where you can chat back and forth just in order to discuss, say, hey, this is what I'm running again, here's the block, I need some legal counsel, I need some medical counsel, or I need some drug company counsel, or I need some digital counsel?
Yeah, so we definitely have strong legal advisors and privacy councils that we tap into. I do have to say that this challenge, the goal is to launch it in the US, whatever we'll come up with, and then if we find it's appropriate, we'll definitely commercialize it within other countries. But yes, we definitely are working very closely. Even during the launch of our app, we collaborated very closely with the legal in Denmark. So we're definitely collaborating very closely, and it's all about having those regular touch points and conversations. But that's something that we're still learning. So we will get better at it, but yeah, it's a learning process for us. I hope I answered your question.
Terrific.
Hello, I'm wondering if we can get into the weeds just for a second and a more detailed question about diabetes. I understand that it's a very complex problem. Can you talk about the kinds of outcomes that I guess both the payers and the providers are trying to avoid? We understand obviously there's death at one end, but are we talking about rehospitalization? What other kinds of negative outcomes should our solution address?
Yeah. I mean, what we're looking at, to your point, is days out of work. Yes, we're looking at the standard metrics such as A1C level. We're looking at adherence. How much longer are patients who, for example, are tapping into a patient support program, or that we support these patients with, how much longer are they staying on their medicine? Titration, for example, hypo. So we're looking at all these metrics, but I have to tell you, the standard metrics is probably adherence and A1C levels. Health outcomes, we're currently tackling this, but we don't, I'm going to be honest with you, we don't have the hardcore data that the payer may be looking for, and that's something that we're hoping to be able to generate in the next year, to be able to demonstrate that indeed patients who are using digital devices, for example, are indeed experiencing less hospitalization, are experiencing a better lifestyle. It's very, very important metric for us that we'll be looking to explore.
Not yet defined at the high level.
And I think this actually, I'm going to leapfrog off that question because I think it's a really important point of the value of sort of this challenge in the community that we're bringing together. Just as a plug, so Hollie had mentioned this incubation period and the boot camp that we're going to be doing here in November. A big part of that session is exactly this, which is to say, look, we're going to get the Novo Nordisk perspective in terms of what types of solutions can work really well within their four walls. But how are payers thinking about it? How are health systems thinking about it? How are physicians thinking about it? So the folks that get apply and are invited to participate in that incubation will have an opportunity to talk with all of these stakeholders. And that's exactly what we're trying to do, is make sure we've got the pharma med tech perspective, get the payer perspective, health system perspective, so that as you're developing your solution, you're making sure that all these outcomes, the ROI metrics, the things that you should be looking at are incorporated in your solution, and you have that perspective from the community. So it's a great question, and that's exactly what we're trying to learn in this process. Okay, we got one question over here.
Hi. You mentioned adherence in your last response. Could you talk a little bit about how Novo Nordisk thinks about adherence in general, and also diabetes is a bit of a unique disease. Some of the drugs, for example, you may only need to take once per week, or an injection of once per week. Does that change the outlook of adherence for those specific types of drugs?
That's a good question. Very interesting. Well, I guess, when it comes to adherence, we're also defining it, obviously, how long you're staying on your medication, right? But I think with digital health, there's an opportunity for other key metrics, such as we're looking at the BG levels and how does that correlate to hypoglycemia. So I think there's a really good opportunity to broaden that. But because at least I think so, we are so early on in the digital health space that this is something that we're hoping to uncover in the next year. But adherence has been kind of this traditional metric that we've been looking for, and it's easier to gain access to that metric. Now with digital health, where we're collecting all sorts of data, I think there's an opportunity for us to expand upon it and look for other key metrics that may be not only significant to us, but also to the physician and the payer. And we have some conversations around it internally, but we're not quite there yet to really publish it. But there are definitely other metrics we're looking at.
And also around behavior and nudges. Okay, why should I take another insulin? Another shot I don't want to. So adding these sorts of nudges and behavioral and motivational drivers to actually encourage people to continue to take their treatment as well. And gamification are also interesting areas around that.
Yeah.
Oh.
I believe that Katarina in particular mentioned the rule of halves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what we've talked about so far, particularly in this fireside, has been people that are engaged with their care. And we recognize that the numbers are staggering with where they're climbing, where they are currently, of the number of people with diabetes, type 1 and type 2. Of course, anybody who would take insulin or manage as a person with diabetes. How does Novo particularly prefer to engage with people who might not be there? How do you recognize that there is a huge gap in care in people who understand a diagnosis, or that they're heading towards a diagnosis, or anything of that nature?
Mm-hmm. How do we prevent?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, it's awareness. We have a lot of resources, as I mentioned, that are disease-focused. So we do a lot of outreach. We work with a lot of professional organizations. And it's through that outreach that but it's tough. I mean, there is no magic bullet, quite honestly. We know, and that's why it's so important for us to assure that everyone at Novo Nordisk understands the patient. We have, like I mentioned, like Hollie mentioned, we have anthropologists. There was one over the summer who was teaching empathy and it's was all about patients with diabetes, and she spent 3 hours with almost every employee in a group setting on demonstrating how a patient feels that has diabetes. But honestly, we're trying to reach them locally through certain organizations, but it is very difficult. It is hard. So that's why, and it was interesting because I was at a conference not that long ago, and I was talking about digital devices, and one of the panelists asked me, so why would I use this app versus this app? Like what, And my response was, you know what, we might as well just go to bed and just not do anything. But it's important to figure out what will make a difference. And we haven't really found a magic bullet yet. But it is from my experience, is through reaching through all the different professional organizations, through potentially employers and education. But we haven't really found the magic bullet.
We also have changing diabetes.
Exactly.
Changing cities through diabetes. So it's very much around campaigns
Yes.
and awareness, but it's also, there's a lot of information out there. So how do you actually know that you might have some of the symptoms of diabetes as well? It's a very big challenge for all of us. Yeah.
I would like to check what are your thoughts on the diabetes reversal? So is Novo has any research in this area? Because a lot of new research has come up that diabetes and type 1 and type 2 can be reversed by lifestyle change. So is there any research or any initiative that is going on in this space?
Not that I am aware of. Are you aware of anything, Hollie?
I think not Novo Nordisk driven research, but you can see studies that I think there was a program in Denmark that said if you sort of change your lifestyle habits, they had sort of a group of individuals that had a dedicated lifestyle routine and weight. They actually were able to go off insulin to manage their diabetes, but for how long that was, I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, not specifically.
Is this challenge open to some of the
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Hi. You guys mentioned a couple times you've done quite a bit of studies over the last 2 years, anthropology studies, and really understanding the patients. So as you think of a solution to bring to market, have you started segmenting that population of patients to understand, is there really a one-size-fits-all solution from an entrepreneur, or is there really a segmented approach to these populations? Do you guys have insights into that?
So that's a great question, because that's very important to us, and that's part of the learning. But we're starting to do that. Obviously, there's your typical segmentation, but there's also the segmentation specific to digital devices. Which population will be? Yeah, absolutely, and that's something that we're definitely looking into.
and also behavioral
Yes.
archetypes.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can say that you're a smartphone user, but then, okay, so how much time do you actually spend on your smartphone?
Yeah.
So you might actually have one, you might give a call, but are you actually an active user? There's also a difference between segmenting based on active use of using your smartphone. So we're definitely doing that.
Yeah.
So just to piggyback off that question, there's one in here that you can field is the digital diabetes management space is very congested. It's a very mature market.
Yeah.
So a lot of folks have been working in this space. What do you think is missing from that space?
Yeah.
If I would have known, I wouldn't be
We
here.
wouldn't be here.
Well, I think, you know, in this country in particular, I think it's, you know, healthcare is obviously, you know, a big issue. You know, I honestly don't know, because I personally think through digital health, we have the ability to your point, at some point, segment our consumers and deliver them in the information that they need at the time they need it. And not only that, but also share it with their network, with their physicians and whoever else. I think that's probably the next opportunity. Is real, because that's what we've been hearing from patients. There's so much stuff out there. I just don't know what to do. But if we can guide them through digital health and help them and help their care team identify what challenges they have through data, I would probably put my money on there.
Are there organizations, whether it's advocacy organizations or other startups that you've seen, or even other large companies, when you look at their digital health approaches or technologies, maybe start with the advocacy groups, are there ones where you say, okay, they've really seemed to figure out the understanding of their patient base, their customer base? Are there any particular examples or tools that you see that are out there where you say that seems to be working really well? To your point, it's hard to necessarily define today what are the endpoints and metrics we're looking for, but what sort of looks good? You know, if you start to say what looks good today, what seems to be working, and then kind of dissect that and say, okay, what endpoints are they really hitting?
Yeah.
Curious if there are any examples that, in your experience, you can think through.
I think that if it's initiated, something that you've mentioned, Holly, like patients still very much trust their physicians. So if it's initiated by the physician, if the physician buys into this, whatever solution this may be, whether or not it's a digital, an app, or health systems that are, that believe in digital health, that set up a center in their health system that helps patients get familiar with the digital devices. I've seen this working really well, and the patients are more adherent, they're more likely to use it. So it really, from my experience, it really starts with the physician. And maybe potentially with the family member, but still they're looking at their physician as the authoritative figure, as the person that they trust. So really driving it at the physician level.
Yeah, the care team, and also, I mean, living with diabetes, people also are living with other chronic conditions. So, I mean, it's also, it's about your family as well. So it's also about your care team around you. So I think also it's important to engage other people and the community around you that may be another supporter of what little hacks of what you could do if somebody else was living with diabetes that you could also build on. So there's also, I think, a community aspect of really good solutions if you can engage the community as well.
Support network. That
Support
comes up
network, exactly.
that always comes up whenever you talk to these.
Whenever we talk to patients, it's like, oh, I have never actually had the opportunity to talk to somebody else living with type 2 diabetes, and then suddenly it's like, hang on, guys, hang on, let's discuss what we're here today, because finally you can feel comfortable talking to somebody else.
Absolutely.
So I think the key element is also tapping into the community around you and empowering you that you're not alone. We can do this together. I think solutions like that. But yes, to your point, it's really difficult to find somebody that is really, really doing it well, because also the drop-off, the engagement levels also kind of drop off. People kind of get over, apps and things like that. So it's tricky. Yeah.
Thanks. So my question actually is, I guess, leading up to everything you kind of just said. So there were two very recent pieces of literature that came out. Both were reviews on mHealth and the diabetes space, and both came to the same conclusion. So essentially that they looked between X number of years and X number of years and showed that there are hundreds of diabetes apps. They might be downloaded. Very few are actually evidence-based or actually end up on based on evidence-based guidelines. And then of those guidelines, very few are actually studied. And then another review also showed that of the hundreds that were available in the last 5 years, I think 6 are readily available for free now, and then of those actually 3 don't even work.
Right.
So the turnover is huge, and it's not really aligned with physicians. So can you kind of talk about what you're going to do to ensure that that doesn't end up being the end road of something like this?
I mean, I've mentioned the app because this was honestly our very first experience, but we know that the world doesn't end. I just brought it up as an example, but there is more than specific to digital health than just an app. There could be other ways of capturing the data. So we are not necessarily closing the door at this is the app and it has to evolve around the app. There are other opportunities and other ways just to the topic that you've brought up earlier, the segmentation, because not everyone, maybe 5% of the US population love apps, and they will particularly diabetes related apps. But that's the beauty of digital health. We can find what the audience, what the user is more likely to use. So we can experiment. That's my point. It doesn't have to be the app that will end up on it. There's the digital health. I think it's much broader than this. Yeah, I just brought up the app as an example.
Yeah, it is a challenge. I mean, the average age of people living with type 2 diabetes is also 55, and around 60. So it's also, how do you tap into this generation of people that maybe not be downloading apps and being very tech savvy? So it is a challenge, and we're also looking for help as well on how to do that.
Thank you, yeah.
Hi, Josie Tatone, Willway Global. Nice to meet you both.
Nice to meet you.
In terms of the challenge, is this better? Thank you. In terms of the challenge, is there a prioritization in terms of the data sharing, the titration, the dialogue, the health insights, in terms of implementation, or is the idea to implement a solution for all of those all at once?
I guess specifically for the challenge, I mean, it's up to you for which one you believe your solution would be the best fit. But each of these 4 focus areas are important aspects of our digital health strategy and where we're focusing. So yeah, I would say a combination of one or all of them is the best fit. Yeah.
Could you share, just elaborate a little bit more on the, again, we've seen a lot of challenges come through, and I'm sure you guys have seen it too. The opportunity to actually play with a data set of patients. You talked about it before.
Yeah.
Maybe just share a little bit of a picture of how you envision somebody maybe even using that that data set. How can somebody actually sort of play with that to develop their solution?
Yeah, exactly. So so we developed connected pens, and then that captures sort of the drug size, the drug type, and what time you took your dose. So these are sort of the metrics or the data points that we're taking from the connected pen, and then we've also combined that with blood glucose levels. So when are you having your highs and lows? So if you add some smarts to that, some algorithms, you could be looking at, okay, so how could we predict a hypo? Based on when that person took their last shot and their BG level, You can predict and send maybe an alert or a notification to a family member if it was for somebody living with type 1 diabetes. So very much around solutions on how you can actually see the curve and predict, be quite smart and predict different things like that. But also adding other elements of exercise. So could you maybe say, okay, maybe don't take this much insulin, but go for a walk, and that'll keep your blood sugar down. So it's these sorts of aspects of playing around, seeing the trigger points, and coming up with smart ways to actually present the data in a more meaningful way than just basically data points. So this is sort of the smarts of what we're looking at on how to pull all these different databases together to create something more meaningful. Yeah.
Could you also share a little bit about, for the challenge specifically, stage of products or ideas that you're looking for in the challenge? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we're looking for early stage ideas. So it could be a really good idea that you're able to find a value proposition from, and then the idea is that we could bake that a little bit more out in the incubation phase at the boot camp and actually validate your hypothesis of what you've come up with. So it's very much early stage because we also want to co-develop you and co-develop and work with you and partner with your solution so we can target it a little bit more specifically, perhaps. But it can also be, God, if you've been developing and had a startup for a very long time and you're like, maybe I can just tweak this a little bit to the space that we're looking for, then that is also a possibility. So it could be anybody from working alone to having a small team or actually having a startup for some time. As long as you're sort of open for partnership opportunities and to get some inspiration and some expertise from Novo Nordisk as well.
I'll take a couple more questions from here and from the audience. Would you consider a solution that establishes a type of mentoring program like AA, where a diabetes patient can have a buddy who is managing their diabetes well?
Huh.
Yeah, that's
Very
a good
interesting.
idea. Very interesting.
Yeah. You just gave away your IP there. Just kidding. Other questions from the audience? Midori.
What is your requirement for IP for this challenge?
We need James here, our IT.
So basically we have this approach, please don't send anything that's IP sensitive. Everything is open. And if we get to a point where we need to sign something with you, if you feel like you can't share any more about your idea, and we need to sign something, then we'll do that. But it's very much in this idea of open innovation, open collaboration, before we need to kind of lock down it and protect you as well. And we've developed some pretty founder-friendly terms as well, so you know what you're getting into, and we're not here to kind of steal your ideas, but actually work with you and actually license your ideas as well. That's very much what we're interested in. So it's about protecting your IP, what's sensitive, but knowing this is sort of a public domain in the sense that we want to help each other innovate and advance your solutions.
How many people are you going to take to go in the incubator program? Obviously only one wins, but as we submit different proposals in that, do we have any idea what they told you, how many people you can, is it 50 or is it 100, is it 5?
So
Is it the United States, is it based in Europe, or how does that work?
So we'll choose around 10 to 15 ideas to go into the incubation round. And then at demo day, that's a way to sort of find the 3 to 5 that will go into the accelerator in the new year. And I mean, it is US focused. And obviously the program is quite ambitious in terms of the timeline. So we are very much focusing on the US market. But we may get some, and we are getting some international applications as well. So it's a global program with a US focus. Yeah.
Obvious question, does the company have an investment arm? Because $25,000 is only going to take you so far. Not that nice, but this isn't Denmark over here.
That's a really good question, and I think going into the digital age, I think that's we're discussing that a lot.
Yeah.
Of course, Novo Nordisk is owned by Novo Holdings and the Novo Nordisk Foundation, which actually has huge grants and foundations to go into research, which goes back into society, and they obviously represent the interest of Novo Holdings and Novo Nordisk Foundation. But Novo Nordisk as an entity, we don't have a venture arm as such, but we are very much getting active into looking into licensing options, and we have done mergers and acquisitions and licensing before, but you can't say it's a dedicated sort of arm per se. So it's, yeah, we're definitely looking into that.
You know, just to that point, one of the things that we hear a lot at Matter is that there's we talk a lot about a disconnection sometimes between the startup community and industry in terms of building solutions that are really going to get scaled and adopted. And to your question, we actually did quite a number of sort of surveys and interviews with our members, with some of our university partners, to talk about what's sort of a proper incentivization for somebody to join this challenge and participate. And I was actually quite surprised that it actually wasn't the money. It was the opportunity for a co-development opportunity like this, an opportunity to sit down with Novo Nordisk and their leadership and their mentors and really help them develop their solution. So as we thought about how this program is structured and the co-development arm of this program, it really came out of the voices of our community, really our university partners and our startups. So agreed from a dollar size perspective that will only get you so far, and our hope is that this program will actually help our startups engage really closely with the team. And we talked about this incubation period, the boot camp here. You know, we're envisioning about 10 to 15 of Novo's leaders here across their company, their digital health leaders, who are going to be here at Matter and interacting with our companies. So we're hoping there's a huge amount of value add in that regard as well.
And also in the weeks between that incubation period as well. So it's also a lot of face time, which sometimes you can't quantify with money.
Exactly. Yeah.
Actually, you may have just answered my question. As a part of this incubation, whether it's before or after, how fully functioning of a POC or a prototype would you be thinking about, right? Meaning, are you looking for the idea that seeds the foundation and you'll incubate it together, or are you looking for something that's a POC, that's a prototype working already that you can play with? Do you have a preference? You can choose to not answer. It's open to all.
Yeah. I would say it's open to all. I think
I agree.
If you can, I think it's better for you if you can put more work in your solution, then we actually have something to play with, and you kind of having a very half-baked solution, and then we have to kind of figure it out together. So I think if you really want to own your solution, I would say invest spending a little bit more time getting it to a level where you feel comfortable to drive that and have discussions around that. That would be, yeah.
Terrific. Any last questions? All right, one more.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much. Hi, good evening. My name is Ang, and I'm with a small startup here at University of Chicago. High-level question is about 80% of all insulin prescriptions are done by PCP, right? There's only about 5,000 endocrinologists, about probably about 85,000 PCPs, and we know there's going to be a shortage, about 130,000 physicians by 2030. So, from the Novo Nordisk perspective, what needs to be fixed the most in terms of the service side?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if I can answer this, to be honest with you. I think what I really believe in is the fact that we have the diabetes educators, right, who are spending the time with the physician, because it does require a lot of education. So your point, if someone is diagnosed with diabetes at a PCP office, you get the prescription, you get a little bit of education, and then the patient is left alone and doesn't know what to do. So so I think we as Novo Nordisk are coming in with that education component that we currently have a very robust patient support program, but as I mentioned in the beginning, it's overwhelming. So I think where we can come in with digital health is, as I've mentioned before, is deliver the right information to them at the time that they need it. Because I absolutely agree with you. When someone is diagnosed with diabetes at their annual checkup, it's hard. It's confusing because the PCPs are not necessarily trained and educated on how to treat patients with diabetes. So I think we can hopefully supplement with that digital health aspect of it and really delivering them the education that they need. But it's tough. Yeah.
So with that, would definitely encourage all of you to visit the MATTER website, where we've got the information on the challenge. There's a link to an application page where folks will register, and there's a application form that you fill out. You don't have to fill it out all at once. You can work through it. As Hollie said, October 26th is the deadline for that. We are absolutely open to, if there are any questions that come up or folks have any thoughts or questions that you want to bounce off of us, we're certainly here. Please don't hesitate to reach out if there are any questions. But we hope to see your applications and ideas come through. And I think Hollie and Katarina will be here for a little bit to help answer some questions. So whatever's left to the food and the drink, please help yourself, and please stick around. Thank you guys for joining us tonight.
Thank you.